I don't pick up hitchhikers anymore. I used to tell myself I would if someone genuinely looked like they needed help. But after this, I stopped making exceptions. This happened about 6 years ago in northern Arizona. I was driving east late at night, somewhere between towns where the exits get spread out and there's not much open after dark. It was cold, probably mid-30s, and there wasn't much traffic. About 3 hours into my drive, I saw a lady standing near the shoulder just before exit 42. She wasn't waving or holding a sign. She was just standing under the highway light facing the road. Mid-20s, maybe. Jeans, thin jacket, nothing that looked like luggage. No backpack, no purse that I could see. I passed her at first, but about half a mile down the road, I started thinking about it. If her car had broken down, she could have been stuck there a while. The next town wasn't exactly within walking distance, and there weren't any open businesses nearby at that hour, so I turned around. When I approached her, I slowed down, checked my mirrors, and pulled over. She walked up to the passenger side pretty quickly. I cracked the window and asked if she needed help. She said her car had stalled back near the previous exit, and she was trying to get to exit 44 where a friend was supposed to meet her. Her voice was steady, not frantic, not upset, just calm. I told her I could take her as far as 44, and she got in, buckled up, and said, "Thank you." Nothing dramatic. She didn't smell like alcohol. She didn't seem nervous. For the first few minutes, it was normal conversation. I asked what kind of car she was driving, and she said a gray sedan. I asked if she had called for roadside assistance, and she said her phone battery had died. The thing that started to bother me wasn't anything obvious. It was just that she didn't ask anything back. Most people are curious about what you haul or where you're headed. She wasn't. She just answered my questions and stared forward. At one point, I asked exactly where her car had broken down, thinking maybe I could mention it on the CB in case another driver passed it. She hesitated before answering and said, "Close to the ramp." That was vague enough that it didn't help much. We were about 5 minutes from exit 44 when I noticed headlights in my side mirror that hadn't been there before. A pickup truck had come up behind us and was following pretty closely. I didn't think much of it at first. It's a highway, cars pass, but the pickup didn't pass. It stayed directly behind my trailer. When I moved slightly within my lane, it adjusted. That's when I glanced over at her. She had finally turned her head, but not toward the window. She was looking at the side mirror. I asked if that was her friend behind us. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "No, just keep driving." Her tone had changed. It wasn't flat anymore. It was tense. The pickup stayed on us all the way to the exit ramp. When I slowed down to take exit 44, it slowed too. That's when I felt it click. If someone wanted to rob a truck, forcing it to stop near an exit at night wouldn't be a bad way to do it. I kept driving past the exit. She turned toward me sharply and asked why I didn't take it. I told her I'd rather drop her at the next truck stop where there were lights and cameras. She didn't like that answer. Her voice got sharper and she said her friend was waiting. I told her if that pickup was her friend, he could follow us to the truck stop. The pickup stayed behind us for another mile, then suddenly accelerated and passed on the left. As it went by, I got a good look inside. 2 men in the cab. Neither one looked over. They just kept going. After they were out of sight, the cab got very quiet. We drove another 10 minutes in silence until we reached a well-lit truck stop. I pulled into the main lot under the cameras and parked near the entrance. I told her this was as far as I was comfortable taking her. She stared at me for a few seconds like she was weighing something. Then she unbuckled, opened the door, and stepped out, without saying thank you this time. As she walked toward the building, I noticed she wasn't heading to the entrance. She was walking toward the far edge of the lot. I watched in the mirror as a pickup truck rolled in from the opposite side of the property. Headlights off until the last second. It was the same one. She got into the passenger side, and they left immediately. No one went inside the truck stop. I sat there longer than I needed to. Maybe it was coincidence, maybe it wasn't. Maybe they just knew each other, and the story about the broken car was real. But I never saw a stalled gray sedan near exit 42 on any of my return trips. And I never stop for hitchhikers anymore. Not because I think they're ghosts, but because sometimes they're not. I've been driving overnight routes for years now, mostly across Nevada and Utah, so I'm pretty used to long stretches of empty highway, just the hum of the engine, the glow of the dash, and miles of road with the occasional set of headlights passing the other direction. This happened last winter during a run from Salt Lake down towards southern Nevada. My trailer was sealed at the distribution center before I left, which is normal when you're hauling retail freight. Once that seal is on, you're not supposed to open the doors until the receiver cuts it at the destination. About 2 hours into the drive, my fuel light came on sooner than I expected. The wind had been bad that night, so I figured it just burned through more diesel than usual. I pulled off at a truck stop just outside of a small town. It was around 1:30 in the morning. The lot was quiet, maybe 6 or 7 trucks parked along the far row, but the pumps were empty. I filled up, grabbed a coffee, and did a quick walk around like I always do before getting back on the road. Tires looked fine, lights were working, nothing leaking. When I checked the back doors, the seal was still there, bright red plastic tag threaded through the latch, exactly how the warehouse had put it. Everything looked normal. I got back on the interstate and drove another hour or so south. The road out there is long and empty, especially that time of night. There's a rest stop about 60 miles down the highway that I usually use to stretch my legs and check things over again. It's nothing fancy, just a small parking area with a couple of lights, some vending machines, and a row of truck spaces along the back. When I pulled in, there were only 2 other trucks parked there. Both of them were dark with the curtains drawn. I parked along the far edge of the lot and shut the engine down. After sitting for that long, I like to walk around the truck and trailer just to stay loose and make sure nothing shifted during the drive. Everything looked fine along the sides of the trailer, tires still good, no loose straps on the mud flaps, nothing unusual. When I got to the back though, something immediately caught my attention. The seal was gone. At first I thought maybe I was remembering wrong, which can happen after hours on the road, but I clearly remembered checking it at the fuel stop. It had been there. Now the latch was closed, but the plastic seal that should have been threaded through it wasn't there anymore. My first thought was that someone had broken it while I was inside the truck stop getting coffee. It wouldn't be the first time thieves tried to peek inside a trailer to see if anything worth stealing was in there. Still, it didn't sit right with me. Most cargo theft happens when a truck is parked for a long time. Nobody usually risks opening a trailer in the middle of a lit fuel station with cameras everywhere, and if they did, they would normally grab something and leave. I stood there for a minute under the rest stop lights, just staring at the latch. Then I unlocked it and pulled the right door open. The first thing I noticed was that nothing looked obviously missing. The trailer was full of boxed retail inventory stacked on pallets and shrink-wrapped. From the back, it still looked mostly intact. But once my eyes adjusted to the dark inside, I could tell things had definitely been moved. One of the pallets near the doors had been shifted sideways. The plastic wrap was torn open along the top, like someone had reached inside and pulled a few boxes out before shoving them back in place. A couple of cartons were sitting crooked, like they'd been handled and put back quickly. It looked less like someone stealing and more like someone searching. I climbed up onto the trailer lip and shined my phone light farther inside. The beam of light ran down the narrow aisle between the pallets. Boxes were scuffed in places where they'd clearly been moved around. Toward the middle of the trailer, one of the stacks leaned slightly like someone had pushed past it. That's when a thought crossed my mind that made the back of my neck go cold. Between the truck stop and this rest area, I hadn't stopped once. If someone had opened the trailer back there and climbed inside to look for something, they would have had to do it while I was still parked. And if they didn't get out before I pulled away, they would have been inside the trailer for the entire drive down the highway. I stood there listening. The rest stop was completely quiet except for the distant sound of wind across the pavement. No movement inside the trailer, no shifting boxes, nothing. I told myself it was impossible. Even if someone had somehow gotten trapped inside, they would have started banging on the walls or trying to get my attention once we were moving. Still, I couldn't shake that feeling. I closed the trailer door, locked the latch, and climbed back into the cab. My hands felt colder than they should have as I started the engine again. As I pulled out of the rest stop, I kept glancing in the side mirrors, half expecting to see someone running out from behind the trailer. The highway ahead was empty. About 20 minutes later, I stopped at a way station that happened to be open that night and told one of the officers what I'd found. They checked the trailer with me under better lighting. Nothing was missing according to the manifest, just boxes moved around, like someone had been digging through them looking for a specific item. The officer asked if I had stopped anywhere unusual earlier that night. I told him about the fuel stop. They pulled the security footage later that morning. According to the truck stop cameras, no one had gone near the back of my trailer while I was parked there, which means the seal had to have been broken sometime after I got back on the road. Somewhere during that hour of driving between the fuel station and that rest stop, someone had opened the trailer. And if they had been inside while the truck was moving, the only way out would have been when I slowed down enough for them to jump. The problem is, the truck never slowed down anywhere except the ramp into that rest stop. So if someone did jump out, it probably would have been at highway speed in the middle of nowhere, sometime during that last mile before I pulled in. To this day, I still don't fully understand what happened that night. I've been driving long haul for about 9 years now, mostly refrigerated freight up and down the West Coast. The hours don't bother me anymore. You get used to being awake when everyone else is asleep. After a while, 2 a.m. feels normal and noon feels strange. This happened last winter somewhere in northern Nevada, right past mile marker 214. I remember the marker because I looked at it 4 different times that night, trying to convince myself I wasn't losing it. I'd been on the road for about 7 hours. Nothing unusual, clear sky, cold air, barely any traffic. It was one of those stretches where you can drive for 20 minutes and not see another set of headlights. The kind of road where your brain starts playing tricks on you just from the monotony. Up ahead, I noticed something on the shoulder. At first, I assumed it was debris, maybe a blown tire tread or a cardboard box that fell off a flatbed. As I got closer, I realized it was a person standing near the guardrail. Now, most drivers won't stop for hitchhikers, especially in the middle of nowhere at night. But this guy wasn't thumbing for a ride. He was just standing there, facing the highway. No car pulled over behind him, no hazard lights, nothing. He was wearing a dark jacket and jeans. Looked like a regular guy, mid-30s maybe. I slowed down a little as I passed him, partly out of instinct, partly because it didn't make sense. If his car had broken down, it wasn't anywhere near him. As I went by, he turned his head and watched me, not waving, not signaling, just watching. I kept driving, but something about it stuck with me. There aren't towns out there, no gas stations, no houses within walking distance. If you're out on that stretch at night, you either have a vehicle or you're in serious trouble. About half a mile later, I checked my side mirror out of habit. He was still there. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. He wasn't half a mile back. He was still near mile marker 214. I felt a little jolt of confusion. I knew I'd been moving. I hadn't slowed to a crawl. My cruise control was set at 65. I told myself I must have misread the marker the first time. Maybe it was 213 before and I hadn't paid attention. I kept going. 5 minutes later, I saw the reflective green sign again in the distance, and there he was. Same guardrail, same posture, standing there like he hadn't moved an inch. At that point, I actually felt my hands tighten on the wheel. I started doing the math in my head. I hadn't turned around. There are no loops on that highway, no frontage roads that reconnect like that. It's just straight desert. I slowed down this time. As I got closer, I could see his face more clearly in my headlights. He didn't look injured, no blood, no torn clothes. He didn't look drunk either. His expression was blank, almost tired. When I passed him the third time, he raised his hand slightly, not waving exactly, just lifting it a few inches like he wanted me to stop. I kept going. About a mile down, I pulled onto the shoulder. I don't know why I did. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself this was normal. Maybe I figured if I turned around and went back, I'd see what was actually happening. There was a legal turnaround about 2 miles ahead for emergency vehicles, and I used it. I headed back the way I'd come, fully expecting the shoulder to be empty and for me to feel stupid. As I approached mile marker 214 from the opposite direction, my headlights swept across the guardrail. No one was there. I drove slower, scanning both sides of the road. There was no car parked anywhere, no footprints in the thin layer of frost near the shoulder, just open desert and that same stretch of metal railing. I kept going another few miles, then turned around again and headed back north, the way I was originally traveling. And when I reached mile marker 214 for the fourth time, he was there again. Same spot. This time he wasn't facing the road. He was facing away from it, facing the desert, standing so still that for a second I wondered if he was even real. I didn't slow down. I didn't look in my mirrors. I just drove. About 20 miles later, I stopped at a small truck stop to get coffee and clear my head. I must have looked off because the cashier asked if I was all right. I ended up mentioning it to an older driver sitting at the counter. I didn't frame it like something supernatural. I just said I thought I saw the same guy on the shoulder multiple times and it didn't make sense. The older driver didn't laugh. He asked me where. I told him the mile marker. He nodded slowly and said a few years back there had been an accident out there. A driver hit a man walking along the shoulder late at night. The report said the guy had wandered off from a stalled vehicle and was disoriented. By the time anyone realized what happened, it was too late. According to him, drivers sometimes call it in, thinking there's someone standing on the road. Highway patrol goes out, finds nothing. Officially, it's just fatigue. Night driving does things to your depth perception. Reflective posts can look like people. Your brain fills in details that aren't there. That explanation should have made me feel better. It didn't, because the part I can't shake isn't seeing him once or even twice. It's the fact that when I passed him that last time, after turning around twice, he had changed direction, like he knew I was coming back. I still take that highway when the load calls for it. The shoulder at 214 is always empty now, just guardrail and open desert. I don't slow down anymore. I just make sure my fuel tank's full before I get there, because I have no intention of ever stopping on that stretch of road.